So my next project is I got a Walker Turner 20 inch 1100 series drill press, and it came with the original 3-phase motor. I got a single phase motor to go with it, and it has this kind of styling, and I don't know if you can see or if that's going to be upside down or sideways, but this is 2644 for the serial number, and it has a big base and a nice table and a very thick, like half-inch thick post. And it also came with, because it was 3-phase, a fuse box like for on the wall when it was in the factory, a cover, it's a 3-phase cord, etc. So what I need to do is, because I'm going to paint it, initially I wasn't going to because it looked nice in the picture, but once you see it up close, it's like, yeah, that would look really good. And I've seen some that are fully restored, so I think I'm going to work, and similar to where I did the blue one, I'm going to work and paint this one. I think I'm going to do it in silver though, because I saw one that was restored that was metallic silver, and that looked really cool. But the one thing that I don't completely trust, because wiring is great, but electricity is, one of those nasty things you don't really want to play with. And this is like one of the original or old school cloth covered cords that would go like from here to the box and then to the motor and such. And looking around, it had one of these kind of crimp connectors on the end of the flexible conduit, and I looked inside and there was some electrical tape, and I looked, and under the electrical tape the wires are frayed and such. So yeah, even if I was going to keep, so this switch I believe will do, assuming this is one of the ones that came with it, it will do either 3-phase or single phase. You just have to change the wiring in order for it to work. So I like the look of the switch because the push button on off is kind of cool. And so the switch I like, but the wiring I don't really. Yeah, see, cloth, assuming that will even show up on the video. I don't really trust old cloth wiring because, yeah, I just don't. So I think what I'm going to do is somehow carefully take this out and get new wires and run fresh, more modern, non-cloth covered, non-fraying wires. And I should be able to reuse the switch because, the switch is, this thing's, because it was built for a factory use, not even home use, it's extremely industrial thickness. Like this is, half-inch thick. Everything is like super industrial. Like it, unlike the previous Rockwell one that I restored, that one weighed about 280, 275 pounds total. This one weighs around 645. So yeah, it's cool, but heavy and heavy duty. So yeah, so the first thing is I have a new mobile base ordered. That should get here this afternoon. I'm going to similarly do with the other one that I did, except this is the Bora PM 3500, I think, heavy duty base that I'm getting. Currently it's just on a dolly. And I'm going to put 2 pieces of 3/4 inch plywood and bolt through that on the 4 bolts, and that should, because that base is 6 inches tall, so that's definitely heavy enough. With the 1/2 inch tube, it shouldn't do much moving around, but yeah. So this is my next project. I seem to collect drill presses now as a thing and then refurbish them. So who knows? They're popular, so it's possible I could eventually do that, but the problem is that I'd want to keep them versus selling them again after they're finished, so that would be the hard part. But yeah, first step, now that I took this apart and looked at the wiring, is keep the switch replace the wiring, and then get the one other thing that they said was this motor mount has, because it was set up for this 3-phase motor, the bolt holes and the bolt hole pattern for this is different than for the single phase, so I'll have to figure out and get that bolt pattern sorted out such that I can actually attach the single phase motor to the plate. And yeah, I think that'll work. But then this slides into these holes on the back, and then there's a bolt on the side down underneath it. Of course you can't see. There it is. Yeah, right there. So there's a bolt there that holds the motor in place. But yeah, that should be good. I'm gonna hook it up and see, once I get the motor working, how well the bearings make noise. Person who had worked on this said he had used PB blaster down through the bearing or the oiler hole at the top and down through until all the black gunk and stuff came out, and then he put oil in. But bearings, I think, should have grease versus oil, so I may look, depending on how it makes noise or whatnot, when I get the motor installed, I'll see if I want to take the time to actually take all this apart and check all the bearings and maybe replace them with some sealed bearings. We'll see. Depends on how much noise it makes. But yeah, I think that's gonna work. And here was a sample of, I don't know that you can really tell in this lighting, but there's like the original paint that was there, and here's just some bright silver that I had laying around. So I think that'll work. It's okay that it's not perfectly smooth because the drill press is from like the 40s or 50s, so it shouldn't look like a brand new unit, but it should still look cool. So I think just having that sprayed on will help protect the surface from where the paint had been dinged. Because again, you know, this was in a factory or a pattern shop and industrial use, so it's going to have dings in the paint. But yeah, it does. They cleaned up the tube so that it doesn't have the surface rust on like my other one did, so I have less work in that respect. But yeah, fun stuff. So that's the next, or one of the next projects. I still have all the other projects that I want to do, but now that this is sitting in the garage, I kind of have to poke at this one first so I have my space back to work on the others. Alright, well, I got the switch out of the box. And yeah, these, see, even there you can see that the coating is wearing off, or the cloth is wearing off. So the bottom 3 are the yellow colored and the top 3 are black. And on the other end, the yellow colored are labeled with a W, a 2, and a 1 maybe. And then the black ones are labeled 6 or B, 5, and that one must have been 4, but the tape came off. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that must be it. 4, 5, and 6. So I'm not sure which one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Can't really tell because it's dusty. But what I'm gonna do is, since I'm gonna have to replace the contents of this cable run with 6 fresh wires, I'm going to, one at a time, unhook from here. This may be a bad idea, but we're going to do it anyway. Unhook from here and pull it out to see which one is which on the switch. Because there's no, well, I guess I could poke and pull and see which one does. So anyway, I'm going to work on that next and figure out the proper wiring diagram so I know which are which. Because since this was set up for 3-phase and the motor was actually one of those, I don't know if that's going to work. It's a Crowder Junior Company 480 volt 1.6 amps, serial number 8249C 10-8-80 is what's on the three-phase motor. So I'm probably going to hook it up, at least initially, on single phase. So I'm not going to need 6 wires, I'm only going to need 3. And realistically, if I was going to keep these wires, I could figure out which ones that I'm supposed to use and just go that route. But because I really don't trust this cloth wiring, and since it's frayed in a number of spots and completely falling apart, which is why there was electrical tape on it, I'm going to have to replace all that anyway. So I might as well just replace it with good wiring. And then, yeah, I'm just going to figure out which ones and do 3 wires initially. And then if I decide to eventually hook up the 3-phase motor in the future, I can always run an additional 3 wires through. That's less work, and it'll be less messy where this connects into the motor, because I won't have an extra 3 wires that are just hanging there. Because this does have a box and whatnot for the motor. But yeah, I think I'm just going to do 3 fresh wires through initially, and then because I'll have the wiring diagram, if I decide to use a 3-phase motor with a VFD in the future for the variable frequency drive, I'll be able to do that, but I'll just need to run some extra wires for the switch. That is the next step, is figure out which one of these is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then figure out what wires I need and go to Home Depot and get some wires. Because these are the flexible multi-strand wires. So the option is I get the, flexible multi-strand is probably better for going in there. Anyway, Home Depot sells it, so I'll figure out what I need and then get that. But first I have to figure out the wiring diagram for the switch. And it very well may be that, yeah, see, this says 15 amp, 250 volt, 1 horsepower single phase, 2 horsepower 3-phase, 2 horsepower, 1 single phase, 3 phase, 230 to 2. Yeah, so it's a really good switch, and it'll cover all sorts of voltages that may need to be run on this in the future. But again, I'm going to figure it out and change it to single phase. So that's next. All right. Given that this has the start at the top, stop at the bottom, and then there's the 6 connectors, it goes 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 in the order. And yeah, the reason there's electrical tape is these are all frayed on the tan color. So for whatever reason, they had 3 tan color on the bottom and 3 black on the top. The black wires don't look horrible. Maybe those didn't get touched as much. I mean, old wiring, as long as you don't touch it, isn't horrid, but it's still not as good as more modern stuff. But these tan ones must have got flexed and used more because the coating is frayed, and it's definitely frayed on this end. So yeah, so what I need to do is measure how long these are. This was around 20 inches of flexible hose, so that's probably 2 feet or so. But yeah, I'll measure those and then go figure out what wiring I need and go get that at Home Depot. But at least I know that is the switch diagram. So 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 for the switch. So I should be able to reuse that, which is great, because again, that's a nice heavy duty switch. It makes cool clicking noise for start and stop. So that's awesome. My other one didn't have, the Rockwell I redid didn't have a nice switch on it, just had a cheap switch. So that's why I switched it with the one I did. But yeah, this one has a cool switch. We're going to try and keep that. And now that I have this diagram and I know what wires to get, I can finish my list for Home Depot and then go get some parts and see how it goes. So this is the single phase motor. Getting a lot of glare, of course. It's a Rockwell motor, which is cool. And it's a dual change voltage. There you can do 115 volts or 230 volts. So I don't know if that's visible or which. I guess that kind of works. So there's red, brown, yellow, black. So red and brown together, I guess, and yellow and black. We'll do 115. Red and brown, or red and yellow, brown and black separately. That'll do 230. So what I believe that means is, since there are 4 colors inside this little box, if I wire nut this together so the red and brown are together and the yellow and black are together, that should be wired such that, hey look, this is yellow and black, red and brown. It's already like that. It's just not properly wire nutted. I definitely don't want just that sitting like that inside the case, because that will spark and cause all sorts of mess. So yeah, I'll put wire nuts on there, but the good news is that's already set up for yellow and black and red and brown. So I just need to wire nut that, and we should be good there. So that'll solve this inside portion. And then I just have to figure out, and there's on here, line and line, and then this. So I'm assuming maybe that's ground. I'll have to look up the motor and make sure, because I don't want to get that wrong and fry it, because it's supposed to be a new motor, an unused new motor, or new old stock kind of thing. So yeah, I'll figure out which one is supposed to go here, but most likely it's one of the hot neutral or whatever, and then maybe ground is black, or anyway, I'll figure that out. But this is the motor that we're going to try and use. So the good news is I got lots of wire nuts. I can fix that. I can figure out this part, and then this is where we have the wire coming from the switch to. So yeah, so yeah, just got to figure out the wiring and sort it out. It shouldn't be that bad. So it's just with electrical, you got to take your time and get it right, so you don't fry stuff, either you or the tool. So anyway, fun stuff. All right, got some wire nuts on there, and then I don't know if it shows up on here, but this is a model 83560. BC 56C17D 647A W CCW, 1 horsepower, 115 or 230 volts, 1725 RPM, 60 cycles, 1 single phase, 17 amps or 8.5 amps. So that means it's definitely going to need a 20 amp circuit, which hopefully that'll work fine. The frame is 56Y-10, type SCS, class B. Motor is not thermally protected, code L. Well, the good news is my heavy duty base showed up. I got the PM 3500, 3-inch heavy duty wheels, oversized foot lever, heavy duty metal locking, could get extensions, will hold up to 1,500 pounds. Well, this is only 650, somewhere in there. Since I know my neighbor Robert said he would help move this back and forth, but this was easier. He helped me get it onto the dolly, and that was the biggest important thing. But then I had rented an engine hoist from United Rental, and it actually works pretty cool. And then I got a set of straps and some D-rings on Amazon, and I put towels where it might have had the straps against anything that could possibly have been sharp with the edges and things. And I wrapped it around and looped this side back around that way and up, and that side up and over and around and up. Put it through the D-ring, lock that in, and I even put a towel up here so the yellow and stuff doesn't scratch on the post. And with only having it cranked that far, it's floating, pretty much. It could be up slightly higher, but it's high enough that I can get the dolly out. That is a heavy base, It weighs like 42 pounds or something just by itself. And then I cut two 18.5 by 29.5 pieces of 3/4 inch plywood that I'm going to put in there. And before I did that, I really hope this is going to work. I slid the dolly out, slid that underneath, centered it. This looked like it had about a 1/2 inch clearance on all sides. So I'm really, really hoping that in a minute or two, whenever I move the dolly out, put that in and put it back, that we're going to have about a 1/2 inch clearance on both sides. Then the plan, I got 1/2 inch by 7 inch bolts that we're going to come up through from underneath, and then I have nuts to put on top because that's basically a 1/2 inch hole. So the next step is put that underneath, set this down and basically centered. Take these things, poke where the holes are supposed to be, lift this back up, screw that together, drill it for the holes, and then get these up through, and then somehow set that down on over the bolts, and then try and bolt it down. Well, it's down, and that looks decently centered. So yeah, I was right on the sizing. That's a good thing because I only had the 2 sheets of plywood. I put the 4 bolts in, pounded them down, so that should mark the boards. So now I will take some screws and screw together where I can reach so that the boards hold together, and then I'll lift this up, take the boards out, drill the holes. The big issue is going to be in this front section. I'm going to have to countersink the bolts in the wood about a 1/2 inch because the metal plate comes across where the bolts are. In the back, I should be good. It'll go straight through. All right, I got the holes. Holes for the back and the holes for the front. And because I forgot, well, because I only drilled with a 1/2 inch drill bit and didn't drill with a pilot hole, I couldn't countersink it first. So I used the trick with a Forstner bit where you put a Forstner bit hole in something else, and that'll help keep it straight to drill down and center, because that way, as people who use Forstner bits know, that little point is what holds it in place. If you don't have something that the point can go, it'll wobble all over the place. But doing it this way, it keeps it centered on the hole, and then that works. So, gotta do that one, and then see if I can somehow manage to get them up through from the bottom. Well, the drill press is bolted to the plywood. One thing I realized after I got that far is the plywood is not bolted to the base, and there's no holes in the base to really bolt that, so I'm not 100% sure if that's going to work or not. We're going to try it. This thing's heavy enough and the plywood is down in. It would have to go really far to tilt. I mean, it still could. I don't know. We'll see once I get it unhooked from this. I'll try tilting it back and forth and see if it moves, but it's probably going to be okay. In any case, it is bolted securely to the 2 sheets of plywood, so that's a plus. And it rolls on the base, which that's also a plus. Yeah, it wobbled. I rocked it back and forth and it went doo, 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 doo. So what I did was I took a 1/2 inch bit and drilled down through the wood and then down through the metal plate, and then I had some of these other 1/2 inch bolts. So there's a bolt head there, which I really hope is not lower than the wheel. And yeah, that should hold it solid to the cart. I don't have those in the front, but I really don't think I need more than 2, because most of the weight is in the back, because like the pipe is in the back, the thicker part of the base is in the back, the table's in the back, part of the head and motor will be in the back. So in any case, I managed to use a pry bar and some 2x4s to lever this up, so I didn't have to use the hoist again, which I had already taken down, because I really didn't want to put that back up just for this. But I managed to get it up the 2x4's height, and so now I'll try and carefully lever it back down, and yay, it doesn't rub. It just rolls. And let's see if it, pushing on the very top, let's see how it tilts. It does. I mean, you could push hard enough to tilt the whole thing, but that's okay. I don't ever expect to be pushing quite that hard, hopefully. So, yay, I am very happy. That's awesome. Okay, so I got a stand. Haven't painted it. Probably should have cleaned it first, but it looked fairly clean on the bottom. I know there's a little bit of grit and grease in the track, but the bottom looked fairly good, so I think I'm okay for that part. The very underside also looked good when we had it in the blazer. and it was all painted and not rusted, so I don't need to do anything on the bottom. And it's on the cart and it rolls around, and it's gonna be awesome once I get the head and the motor sorted out and put together. I did buy some replacement wires and cables and things. This rolls around nice on the heavy duty wheels. I really like that. Like, you know, I'm moving it with 2 fingers, and this part probably weighs, well, if the whole thing weighs 600 some pounds, there's probably at least 100, maybe 200 there. So that probably weighs 400 pounds, and rolling it around with 2 fingers is awesome. So now I get to take the engine hoist back. This is actually pretty neat. It's an interesting, really heavy duty design, which would work perfect for their rentals, which that's what they have it for. Because this is like 1/8 inch or something thick wall, tubing, and it's super heavy duty. And you just take, so this is the back of the base, and there's the piece with the wheels. So you just take the other end of that, stick it in there, drop that pin down in the hole, and then there's this piece, which is basically just a piece of box tube that's fully sealed up. That drops down in to this hole as your vertical. And so then you put this part down over top of the vertical post, and then you put the part with the chain in there and lock it in with a pin. So it's literally just held with pins, 3 pins, and it holds together and works great. And that jack is nice because it actually lifts fairly quickly. So I appreciate that too. So yeah, take that back tomorrow because it worked. And I could not have done that without that jack, given the weight of this thing. So that was definitely worth, or hoist rather, that was definitely worth the $47 to rent it for the weekend. So very cool.